16 years after he jumped bail, Vance Roberts was finally convicted of his crimes, receiving 108 years behind bars. Yet police still have two big mysteries on their hands. What happened to the other women he bound and tortured? And where was his brother in crime, Paul Jackson?
We have other pictures. There's other victims out there we don't know about, and what their fate, what happened to them, we don't know.
Desperate for help, authorities teamed up with the TV series The Hunt with John Walsh in hopes of generating a tip on Jackson's whereabouts.
The story of Paul Jackson and his brother Vance Roberts was one of the most chilling and deeply disturbing stories that we did on The Hunt.
But with Jackson now missing for 24 years, series co-executive producer Ted Schillinger had his doubts about scoring a hit.
We thought that Paul Jackson was a long shot. The odds were very high against us catching him.
But the story of Andrea and Michelle, what they endured, compelled them to try.
They are amazing women, and each of them said, I am doing this because I want Paul Jackson caught. When Paul Jackson is caught, my life will then change and I will be able to move on. That was our mission, and so we told a very frightening story.
We actually got a tip that somebody was staying at Walt Disney World right after The Hunt aired, and we sent deputies to the room, knocked on the door, and it happened to be some people from Canada, but not Paul Jackson.
But not Paul Jackson.
Right.
Paul Jackson hasn't been seen since 1991, but months after the show aired, U.S. Marshals received a surprising call from an anonymous source in Guadalajara, Mexico, about a man named Pablo Bennett.
Pablo is Spanish for Paul. So what I did is I just went on Google, like most people do, and I typed in Pablo Bennett, Mexico. LinkedIn pops up. From 1991 till current, all these electronic type jobs in Mexico.
And after more than 20 years looking for this creep, there he is. Turns out Paul, aka Pablo, has been living a comfortable life south of the border.
Paul Jackson had separated from his brother and headed across the Mexican border to make his life anew in Mexico, and had basically stayed there ever since. He had married, he had had a couple of kids, he had a steady job.
U.S. Marshal John Moody immediately alerts Mexican authorities.
And they approached him at his work, which was the last address on his LinkedIn account, and he came out peacefully to them. They asked for him to come out, he came out, and then he was ultimately taken into custody right then and quickly extradited to the United States.
And he said some things like, oh yeah, you're the guy that just would never give up. You're the jerk that just kept after us. And I said, yeah, you remember me.
He looked defeated, like he knew it was over.
But Moody and others strongly suspect that someone kept Jackson's secret for more than 2 decades. His own father.
He knew exactly where Paul was at.
Yes.
The entire time.
Yes.
Do you believe his father has helped him?
I believe he did. He needed help to stay under the radar.
And he would go visit the family in Mexico. And I'm pretty frustrated that there's never been any charges brought against his dad.
Some at home would say, why not charge Paul Jackson's father?
Right, and that's a good question. And as far as that would be up to the district attorney here in Washington County to decide what they want to do.
Jackson's father told investigators he had no idea where Paul was for all those years. But Marshal Moody says he has evidence that proves he knew all along. Once arrested, Jackson's lawyers argued that Paul was merely a pawn in his half-brother's deviant schemes to kidnap and torture women like Andrea and Michelle.
Both women testified and reported that Paul Jackson was the follower, Vance Roberts was the ringleader. That couldn't matter less. Both men participated in violent acts against these women.
You know, there were people in Mexico who wrote about Paul Jackson, saying what a wonderful man he was, how he turned his life around, how he was a wonderful father and a worker and a friend. What do you have to say about it?
I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it for a minute.
Paul Jackson was every bit as guilty of these crimes as Vance Roberts.
The judge agrees, but only to an extent. His half-brother Vance Roberts got 108 years behind bars, but Jackson accepted a plea deal, and after 24 years on the run, he is sentenced to 18 years in prison.
18 years is definitely a long time in jail for anybody.
He will not see his children grow up.
He will not see his 2 children grow up.
But it's not a life sentence, and investigators are still haunted by the innocent sex slaves and these terrifying photos, many of which are so graphic, we can't even show you.
So we have all these pictures, and the pictures are something you can't put in the press. You can't release them to the news media. And
You can't release pictures of naked women.
Women on
Smiling.
Right, on the
that.
news. Exactly.
How can Crime Watch Daily help you?
We need to find the other survivors. I think that's our goal right now. It's part of my mission.
Up next, Crime Watch Daily teams up with a forensic artist to bring you the exclusive, first ever look at these missing victims.
What I'm hoping is we get a name to those faces.
And we need your help.
If you know someone in one of the photographs, pick up the phone and call someone.